I'm going to leave this up for a minute. I'm going to be using a tool called Stable Diffusion, and if anyone wanted to follow along, get your laptop open, phone open, scan a QR code or go to linky.easyeasy.win. There we go. You can see it better that way. All it's going to do is it's going to redirect you to a running instance of Stable Diffusion that I have up, and you can play around while I'm figuring it out and try any of the things I'm going to talk about. And I'll introduce myself while this is up so that everyone has an opportunity to check it out. So first off, I'm really happy to be here. Thank you so much for coming today. It's been really cool to see the DevX community grow month after month, and I'm getting a lot of enjoyment about being able to share excitement for projects and see what other people are building. It seems like AI is pretty popular. Everyone was excited about it. Last event, I opened up Stable Diffusion for a minute, and people were like, oh, this is interesting. So I thought I would talk to you about it. And now hopefully everyone's gotten a chance to open up. We're going to be talking about AI image generation, specifically a technology called Stable Diffusion. And I am Ezekiel. I'm going to be giving this talk. I have 7 years of experience working with web technology mainly, a technology enthusiast, AI hobbyist. I just enjoy this kind of thing, and I'm hoping to share that excitement with you. Stable Diffusion, I'm not really going to go into how much it works under the hood. I stole one slide from our last presenter, Keith, actually, but you'll see that in a minute. But the main thing it does is it allows you to easily, it's a model for generating your own AI images. And the way it works is kind of like, this is your slide, I stole it right out of your thing. But the way it works is if you've ever used a denoising algorithm from when you take a photo and you're able to figure out what is the photo and what is noise, and you kind of remove some of that noise. This is like a magic version of that, where instead you have nothing but noise, and eventually you get to what the image should be. And that's the extremely simplified way of doing it. I thought I'd start off by just showing you some images that have been generated using AI, so you can see what kind of things you can create. This is really highbrow art, very important and moving in our culture and society. There's also some things that you might not even consider, like this is actually AI generated image right here. It doesn't look like it to me. He has all 5 fingers, so I wouldn't be able to tell. But you also get some really pretty things. Really, I feel like AI art gets sometimes a bad rep for being soulless, but it's just another tool for artists to use if they want to create a scene they have in their mind. This isn't AI art, actually. This is a photo a client sent me. They're a construction company, and they were building kitchens. And the company says to me, I want to build a new landing page. And I said, how can I use AI in this? Because I want to use AI. And I thought it would be really cool if I had the original sketch, like a blueprint. And I could say, you take it from an idea to reality. And so I used this Stable Diffusion technology I'm about to show you to transform from the original actual photo to a sketch of it, to an even more rough draft sketch of it, and you can see all 3 of them side by side. And then on the website, I had it fading from one to the next. A lot of people think of just generating one image, but you can actually alter images or use images as inspiration. A lot of ways to personalize it and make it your own. So this is just one example from the real world of me using this for a client. I don't think we ended up actually using it, but it was an iteration I had. So with my talk today, I have a couple goals. I want to explain to you how you can get started with AI image generation technology. I want to inspire enthusiasm about the technology. And I want to just my goal is to give a very high-level overview of how this technology works. I'm not going to go too far into the weeds. We're not going to go into what makes the magic magic. I'm going to say how you, as a person with minimal understanding of how programming works, can do it. I'm going to speak to you as if you are someone who is in the realm of programming, so I expect you to understand some like what Docker is. But if you don't, that's okay. You'll probably still get something out of this. So some common problems when people start on their journey of generating AI images are they don't have the hardware for it. It's kind of, you need a beefy computer to do it locally. It moves so fast that you can't keep up with it. Or sometimes the user interface, like if you have to do everything in Python or in TensorFlow, like where these models are usually interacted with, it can be hard. So I'm going to be overcoming these problems by using RunPod for compute power. If you open up the link and you're playing around on it right now, that is all hosted by a 20-cent per hour server that I'm running with very powerful GPU. They specialize in nice GPUs and things. I'm going to use a pre-built Docker image to deploy my environment. One nice thing about Docker, it just deploys everywhere the same. So if it works in Docker, it'll work for you. You don't have to worry about figuring out if you have a Mac or Windows or whatever you have. I'm going to show you how to personalize it. I'm not going to go too far into depth because we have kind of a shorter time for talking, but I'm just going to talk briefly about what things you can do to personalize AI art, including Lora, ControlNet, and scripts. If you want to get in touch with me, that is something, but we're not there yet. Hello. Okay, so let's jump into it. This is, if you load up Stable Diffusion, this is what it would look like. How do we load up Stable Diffusion? RunPod is one option. There's another place called Vast AI, which is pretty similar. RunPod's pretty easy to interact with, which is why I often recommend it. But you can sign up for an account. If you've ever used a VPS before, like Amazon EC2 or DigitalOcean Droplet, it's very similar. You can spin up a server that runs something. One cool thing RunPod does is they allow you to deploy an image. So you can see these are examples of different GPUs that you can use. This one is like their private cloud. I always use their community cloud, which is just like community members who offer up their GPU for use and are running the software to do it. And you can see I get things like very good price. The prices here are incredible. If you're, I mean, for most use cases, if you're just wanting to mess around with it, you're probably not going to be using more than a few hours at a time. It's like putting coins into an arcade machine. But if you wanted to do something like training your own model, you need to run it for like 4, 8, 12, sometimes 24 hours to actually fine-tune and train these models. And so using this, you don't have to run it with your own electricity, set up your own environment. You can easily pay for 24 hours at 22 cents an hour and let it train it for you. And so you're able to select one of these GPUs and then select a Docker image. And this one is using a Docker image called Stable Diffusion Web UI, which I can send you a link, or I'll post a link to this in the Discord as well. But essentially this is just on Docker Hub if you've ever used it. People can post different Docker images that are already built and ready to go. And this is, the name of it's literally Stable Diffusion Web UI. And you can run it like you'd run any other Docker image. And once you run it, it will open up just like this. And this is Stable Diffusion. Stable Diffusion, I am able to just type very easily. This is no programming experience needed, really. I can say cat with pink hat. And if I hit generate, very quickly it'll be able to generate an output image that looks fairly decent. It's this might not look like much, but if I took this picture by hand, it would take me a lot longer than just typing the prompt. I think it's pretty exciting. If I wanted to simply change something like I wanted it to be an illustration, I could just type comma illustration at the end, and just like that, I'm able to change a little something. So this is very easy. That's no longer a cat, it's a cat hat. Unexpected results. Let's try generating another one. It's going to start with different seeds. That is a cat wearing a pink hat, and it is an illustration instead of I would have to be a little more specific if I wanted to get something exactly right. But you see how this is powerful. Very quickly iterating between different ideas. There's a lot of settings here that are very basic, and I'm not going to go into those too much. Things like how many sample steps or how big or how many you're making at the same time. But let's say I wanted to do something a little bit different. Let's say I want to know, well, how is the word pink affecting this prompt? Like if I wanted a pink, blue, or green hat, I can easily, instead of just messing with one color, I can use this script function with prompt search and replace and type in pink, blue, green, and I'm going to sweep the sub-images. And just like that, when I generate now, it's going to generate not one image, but 3 with those varying prompts. And this kind of gives you an idea of when you're creating images, if you have a certain set of prompts or a certain set of parameters you want to use, because I could not change a word, I could change what model I'm using. I'm going to show you how to select some different models. I could choose this thing called CFG scales is how closely it adheres to your prompt in very basic terms. And I can go through and see how all these things affect it to get an idea of how I want my art to look and what parameters I need to pass in order to be able to make it look the way I want to. And on the first step, this is probably the easiest way to personalize something, is you can do a lot of iterations with something, figure out, let's call it prompt engineering sometimes, where you figure out exactly how to make it your own style using these sets of prompts and settings. And now we want to take a little bit further. What if we want to really capture a specific pose? But sometimes that can be hard to do when you're generating AI images. Or what if I want it to be inspired by a certain person? Well, I can take an image of someone, some random person that I've never seen before in my life. And if it'll let me right click. My right click doesn't, there we go, copy image. And then I can take it over and I can pop it right into here. And this is a feature called image to image, which is just the web UI that I'm using to interact with Stable Diffusion. Allows me to pop things in there. And very quickly I can use this thing called ControlNet that will allow me to basically say, hey, before you make the image, look at what this image is and create like an outline, a bit of guidelines to follow, a control net, if you will, to guide how the image is created. And from here, I can say it is very important, and I want to use this control net. There's a bunch of control nets you can use depending on what kind of things you're trying to capture about the image. And I'm not going to go too far into it. I'm just going to give you an example of how it can work. And then inside the prompt, I'm just going to say cubism. Because cubism is kind of like an art style. It already knows what it's looking at, and it's going to generate it from that image. So if I just type cubism, let's see what the result is. Well, that's not cubism, but you can see it's starting to get something. Let's increase the weight of that word cubism. I'm going to increase it to 1.4 times weight in the prompt. And let's see what that looks like. And we're starting to get cubism. We're starting to get some artistic renditions of the image. And you see how easily it was for me. You can personalize a little more to take in one image and very quickly go to something very similar. This is all free and open source, by the way. This is all able to run on your local machine. Even if you don't have it right now, you can run it on as low as a 1060 Ti GPU that I have in my laptop. I can run these easily. Of course, RunPod, it runs much faster. It's easier for demonstrations. So this is a really cool feature of it. Let's say you wanted to go even more in depth, which I'm not going to show a full of this, but so there's something called Lora. Lora stands for low rank adaptation. No, low rank? Yes. Low rank adaptation. Keith says yes, and I trust Keith. So when you're making a model, like the big part, you need a lot of data. I mean, like you need millions of dollars and tons of compute power to process all this data and be able to make a model that we can then use. But once you have that model, you can fine tune it. You can pretty easily, with a few thousand pictures maybe, teach it new things. But if you even want to teach it something really specific, like you want to teach it what is my favorite character from Zelda games, Link. If I want him, then I can make a Lora specifically of that character or a specific style. And to show you some Lora, I'm going to jump over to this thing called Svit AI. So Svit AI is going to solve another one of our problems, which was, how do we keep up with everything that's changing? Well, to keep up with it, Svit AI is a great place to come. You can view their models. They have some stuff that's not safe for a public audience, but they have lots of models that the community has fine-tuned or trained and made personalized from. And you can choose that model, and you can actually select the image and see what they used to generate this image. So I can click on this little info here. It'll show me the prompt they use. It'll show me any Lora or what sampler, how many, like all the settings, like the seed guidance and steps they use to generate this image. And this will give me an idea where I can look at other people's work and very quickly get an idea of how to do something similar myself and then throw it into Stable Diffusion and mix it up so I can do it. Everything I've shown you so far, also has programmatic API, meaning if you're running the server, you can interact with any of these settings, any of these options for generation using a web API the same way you might hit something externally. And with that in mind, you could easily throw this into your applications just by saying like fetch in JavaScript, fetch this address with these parameters. Okay, let's talk about Lora again. So when I'm going to models, if I type in something like Link or Zelda, and then I type in, this right here, instead of being a full model, is a Lora, which is much, much smaller, much smaller in size. It's only 144 megabytes to add on to your actual model, and you can use it to generate pictures of specifically Princess Zelda. And it'll be much better than just using something like ControlNet or a script or prompt engineering to understand what Zelda is. Because you could say cartoon character with blonde hair, blue shirt, standing in a field, and it would get something. But using Lora, it's been trained to understand that when you say Zelda, you're talking about this character right here. And you can then say, oh, well, what if I want it from an older game or from a different series? And you could train Lora on yourself. You could take several images of yourself. There's actually a lot of guides available, which I will also include in the Discord if that's something that interests you. A thing called Dream Booth, which has a plugin for this web UI. And it will allow you to throw in a few images of yourself or what characters you're interested in, and then use yourself as a name. It'll know who you are, not like on a personal level, but it'll know what you look like well enough to be able to recreate you. As far as the presentation goes, that's most of what I wanted to tell you about today. I wanted to try and keep it short, wanted to try and show you some of the power you have with this and what you can do. There's also, like I said, linky.easyeasy.win. You can interact with that. I'm going to leave it up for the rest of the day. You can play around with it for free. And it's very powerful technology. How am I doing on time? Good? Okay, I'll take some questions.
Go ahead and raise your hand. You got one?
So you had an image of a person. If you had a specifier like oil painting, watercolor, would it do?
We could try it. Let's see what it looks like. Well, I think a demonstration's worth 1,000 words. Let's do, instead of cubism, oil painting. Thank you for the question, Edward. It's a pleasure to hear your thoughts.
Quite curious.
And it begins to look like an oil painting.
Okay.
We could try and see how, maybe instead I want to do impressionist, impressionist. And I could throw that in there instead. That's like its idea of an oil painting. And I could always try and find, now it's doing an impressionist painting, and I could always try and find more specifics on like Lora about oil painting so that it really understands what an oil painting is. But for just a general model, I feel like that does a pretty good job. I would be happy with it.
Beautiful. Any more questions?
Oh, you want me to show in-painting? Yeah, I'd be happy to show you in-painting. So the way in-painting works is, and there's a lot, I'm showing you the tip of the iceberg, how you can get ready, how easy it is to get started. But all these settings have like, the barrier for entry is low, but the skill ceiling is extremely high. So what in-painting allows you to do is, and I can send it to in-painting. So if I do copy image to in-paint, la-di-da-di-da. What I can do is there a way? I can draw specifically where either I only want it to do a certain part, or I want it to do everything but what I highlighted. So like if I highlight this part right here, and you could also programmatically add a mask to the image, but if I do this one right here, and then I say in-paint not masked, and then I generate, it'll do everything the same, except it's only going to do the area I did not highlight. So you'll see the eyes now are exactly the same as the actual picture, and then everything else around it was kind of painted over. And you can do this. This is like one example of doing it, but you could also do it like to add a ship in the background. You could say, oh, you have an image of yourself and you just want to add like a pirate ship in the background of your lake or something. And I've seen people do that, where you could just draw in a small part. Another powerful tool. Any other questions? Raise your hands, don't be shy, I'm friendly, I don't bite.
I had
Please.
one question. What were the how big were the default models that comes with this program to run on Docker? I know I've done some image generation, stable diffusion stuff a while ago, and it just sucked up a lot of my disk space.
Great
So
question.
What's the
So
default size?
models can be anywhere from 2 gigabytes to like 6 gigabytes is normal, 2 to 6 gigabytes per model. Of course, if you want to be experimenting with a lot of different models, you're downloading a lot of different things, then it will readily take up available space. But what I do personally is I'll just delete a model if I'm not using it, because it only takes like 20 minutes or so for me to download a new one if I need it. And then I have a couple that I use for primarily and leave around. And when I compare it to like playing a video game, the video game takes up like 20 gigabytes versus 6 gigabytes for this. I'm happy to have it. There are, and also though the models can be like 2 to 6 gigabytes in size for your base model, a lot of these Lora or additional things are much smaller, like a few hundred megabytes, which in today's age is nothing. Thank you for your question. Thank you for being my sample image. I didn't even ask you for it, but open source, exactly. Any other questions? Please. Or wait, I'll let someone bring you a mic.
Just a comment. There's also stable diffusion video, which you can use in the same interface.
So the comment that he just brought up was that there's also stable diffusion video, which you use the same interface. Yes, absolutely. You can use the same technology to generate video. There's several strategies for it, and you can also use so many plugins that are community made to do things like there's Tortoise TTS that has text to speech. You can actually write text, then it'll generate speech that sounds pretty human or lifelike. There's Soma or Sumo, which is able to generate songs from a script about song and stuff, and you can generate that and then put it on your video. There's tons of, like, if you can imagine it, someone's probably doing it. It's a beautiful world to be in. Go ahead.
Oh, okay. I know this is different, but let's say you had a video and you want to remove noise from the audio.
Yes.
Would you use a tool like that to do that?
So the question was, if you had a video and you wanted to remove noise from the audio, would you use a tool like this to do that? I personally wouldn't use this tool. This tool is primarily for image, video generation. There are plugins. Maybe someone made a similar thing for audio removal. But when I think of audio removal, I think of like Audacity and other like audio program tools.
Well, specifically to remove background noise, to clean up the audio.
So specifically to remove background noise, I would use Audacity. Audacity is great for that.
Really?
Yeah. You can get a noise profile of what the background noise, which this is not what our talk is about, but just let you know.
Okay.
I could show you, but afterwards we'll check it out, yeah?
Everyone give Ezekiel another round of applause.
Yeah.
Thank you so much. I also wanted to say I just had about 8 hours of my weekly time freed up. A client is no longer in need of me. So if anyone needed someone for consulting and it was a smaller project, I'd be happy to talk about that. And I'm very friendly. Don't hesitate to say hello. Thank you so much.